Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. If I would ask you something like, are you happy? And you would probably answer me with a determined yes or no. You would be telling me about how you feel at that moment, just as you think in your mind, or that you have decided to be happy or not. Choosing to be happy or not happy is a choice which you make. And that is your own free will, guiding or helping you to do that. You have not simply imagined it. You made a definite decision and executed it, or still doing it, until the time to stop it. But if it has become habitual, you will remain with it for the rest of your days on earth. And yes, you have the chance and the will to do good or might want to commit a wrong as a human being. That is a known fact and can be described as the free will. Now, if you don't hurt people as a principle or cause pain to anybody, you would probably not accept it as a free will, nor as real, because it's automatic, and perhaps even thinking in the quantum way of understanding. The free will exists all the time. But there is a problem in hearing a concept, it being claimed that there is no free will. Because we have discovered that throughout the centuries of our existence as human beings, everything is set in motion to move and to do things according to the original blueprints. We can only imagine. There are also religious beliefs in which it is widely accepted that after creating men, God has written the destiny and the fate of him on his forehead, and that everything decided for him have to be fulfilled, including all the sufferings of multitudinous kind. And this sounds actually most unusual and almost like children's names or children's games, or made to control people, whichever one might choose. For centuries, man was not encouraged even to question it, for it would be a great and unforgivable sin to question the Spirit. In this case, there would not be any free will, and it could not be considered. In this example, the great one, who was a well-established sculptor or an artist, creator, had only created robots with their assignments already programmed into their circuits. Think about it. Let us try to observe the universe and life in a quantum way for a moment. Now, if I would spin a sphere on the table, and that would be replicated according to quantum understanding elsewhere, somewhere in the universe, perhaps like a mirror image, perhaps in the opposite direction, influencing other things according to what I have chosen to do, just as I started it on my desk. However, physics can only accept what is the common sense in the science of physics, as it got the logic-based discovery wherein free will can not exist. Perhaps some kind of a bridge between the two understandings, would be needed. And there has to be either someone or something moving the object, or there has to be a connection that it connects and moves the other object on the other side of the universe that is being somewhat tested and discovered to be what physics initially observed in reality, as you might also know it. Similarly, the people who have committed things that would be socially inappropriate or unacceptable within a culture we are part of, and they have been accordingly dealt with, and if you would ask them, you would probably get an answer quickly and swiftly, which may be something like, no, there is no free will, or somebody told them so. But what is free will and what is not? Let us look at what we have discovered so far, shall we? Let us now concentrate on the subject of free will and determinism for a moment or two. Free will suggests that as human beings, we are essentially self-determining and free to choose our thoughts and actions. As you know, that maybe we are all dependent on biological and environmental forces, which exert some influence on behavior of people, but implied forces that exert some influence on their behavior, letting them choose, meaning that we are able to reject these also. This is an expected human approach. Determinism, on the other hand, says that free will has no place in explaining behavior. The determinist approach proposes that all behavior has a cause and is predictable. Free will remains an illusion, and all behavior is governed by internal or external forces, or which we have no control over. Fatalism, or hard determinism, suggests that all human behavior has a cause, and it should be possible to identify and describe these causes. And so it assumes that everything we think and are can just be so directed by external and internal forces that we cannot control. Is it somehow compatible with the aims and principles of science? This is yet to be answered. There is also something else called soft determinism, which suggests that humans have some conscious mental control over the way they behave. Soft determinism represents a middle ground wherein people do have a choice, but the choice is constrained by external or internal factors, and that there is an element of free will in all behaviors. Let's consider a cognitive approach. Biological, environmental, and psychic determinism. Biological determinism is based on the belief that behavior is caused by biological or genetic and hormonal evolutionary influences that we cannot control. The biological approach emphasizes the role of biological determinism in behavior because of the logical and neurological process is not under our conscious control. For instance, the influence of the autonomic nervous system during times of, shall we say, stress. What about the environmental determinism? Environmental determinism, the belief that behavior is caused by features of the environment, such as the systems of reward and punishment that we cannot control. B.F. Skinner describes free will as an illusion and argues that the whole behavior is a result of conditioning. Experience of choice is the sum total of reinforcement contingencies that have acted upon us through our lives. For instance, teachers and institutions, gurus and masters in some schools of thought, and temples. Psychic determinism, the belief is that behavior is caused by unconscious conflicts that we cannot control. Sigmund Freud placed more emphasis on the influence or biological drives and instincts than the behaviorists. This determinism suggests that human behavior is determined and directed by unconscious conflicts repressed in childhood. This brings us to the subject of the scientific emphasis on causal explanations. The basic principles of science is that everything in the universe has a reason and a cause, and that these causes can be explained by the general laws. These general laws allow scientists to predict and control events in the future. Therefore, in psychology, the lab experiments enable researchers to simulate the conditions of the test tube and remove all extraneous variables and attempts to precisely control and predict the human behavior. But the question still remains unanswered. Can we put all human emotions and feelings in a test tube like physical things? Can we? Let us evaluate. Let us consider for or against issues for a little time, shall we? 4. Determinism. Determinism is consistent with the aims and observations of science. The value of such research is that prediction and control of human behavior, as yet to the development of treatments, therapies, behavioral interventions, and other considerations in the future terms. Against determinism, in accordance to the hard determinist aspect, is not at all consistent with the way in which our legal systems operate. In a court of law, for instance, offenders are held morally accountable or responsible for their actions. In this observation, determinism seemed to be unfalsifiable because it is based on the idea that causes of behavior will always exist, even though they may have not been at all or really found. For free will. Well, free will has the concept of face value and validity, as it makes cognitive sense. Research suggests that people who have an internal locus of control, as we read, so believe that they have a high degree of influence over events on their own behavior, tend to be more mentally healthy. Think about it. Now, against free will. Neurological studies of decision making by you or anybody else that have revealed evidence against free will, and that the most basic experiences of free will you are being cited and determined by the old brain before we become even aware of them. The researchers found within the encyclopedic terminology that activity related to whether to press a button with the left or right hand occurs in the brain up to about 10 seconds before participants report being consciously aware of making such a decision. Now, we want to know still, what is the free will? Free will is the belief that individuals have the ability to make choices and decisions which are not predetermined by external factors or events. It really suggests that human beings have the power to act freely and independently based on their own thoughts, feelings, and desires. What is then determinism? Question mark. Determinism is the belief that all events, including human actions and decisions, ultimately determined by pre-existing causes or conditions. It suggests in reality that the choices we make or not truly free, but rather are the result of a complex processes of cause and effect relationships. Perhaps we should accept the idea of God. Can free will and determinism coexist? This is the subject of much debate among philosophers and psychologists. Some argue that free will and determinism are fundamentally incompatible, while others suggest that they can be reconciled through a more nuanced understanding of the relationship between external factors and individual agency. Just think about it. I really want to know, how does the debate over free will and determinism relate to psychology? Free will and determinism has been a central topic in psychology for many years, as it touches on fundamental questions about human behavior and human motivation, decision-making, as it is being considered by other intellectuals. Understanding these concepts is important, particularly for, shall we say, the higher class or A-level students who are studying psychology. It's been written all over the place, as it helps them to develop a deeper understanding of issues on how the mind works. What are some of the key theories and perspectives on free will and determinism? Some of the most influential one here is the free will and determinism, which includes psychoanalytic theory, behaviorism, cognitive psychology, and existentialism. Each of these offers a unique perspective on the relationship between external factors and the individual agency. How do cultural and social factors impact this free will and determinism, would you say? Cultural and social factors can play a significant role in shaping beliefs about free will and determinism. You can read all about it on the line. For example, some cultures may add greater emphasis on individual agency and autonomy, while others may emphasize the importance of external factors like fate and destiny. What are some practical implications of the debate over free will and determinism? Free will and determinism has important but practical implications. Let's keep that in mind. For fields like law, ethics, and politics. Understanding these concepts can help all the higher class or A-level students to develop a more nuanced understanding of these areas and the impact on society as a whole. Now, free will is the idea that we can play an active role and have choice in how we behave. Assumption is that individuals are free to choose their behavior and are self-determined. That's a fact. For instance, people can make a free choice as to whether to commit a crime or not. The use of experimental methods, controlled measurements, and the ability to predict behavior, or seeing it as strengths of the nomothetic approach. Furthermore, controlled methods allow for replication to examine the reliability of findings, which has helped psychology. That established itself as a scientific discipline. In all parts of science, this is the fact. The development of theories and empirical testing are just one of the key features of the science that are employed by the normal theoretic approach in psychology as well. When we conduct more research, even online, we further discover just a little more to consider. Because, thankfully, the normal or authentic approach is viewed as scientific. It is therefore useful for predicting and controlling behavior. For example, biological psychologists take a nomothetic approach when explaining obsessive compulsive disorder and claim that OCD is caused by higher levels of dopamine and lower levels of serotonin. Drug therapies are developed on the basis of nomothetic research and work by readdressing a biological imbalance. SSRI are used to treat OCD and increase the availability and uptake of serotonin, thus reducing the anxiety. It is also associated with OCD, which helps to improve the lives of people suffering from this condition, and more appreciatively, as a result of the nomothetic research and medicine. However, frankly, as drug treatments are not always successful for all patients, some psychologists will argue that alternate treatments, for instance, like cognitive behavioral therapy, which are based on ideographic approach, are more suitable for treating those individuals with such conditions as they seek to understand and explain the disorder from a patient's point of view. That's a good point. Furthermore, some psychologists argue that the nomothetic approach loses sight of the whole person due to its fixation on quantitative data and statistical analysis. Furthermore, the psychologists are also quite clear that the nomothetic approaches only provides a superficial understanding of human behavior. For example, as it has been mentioned so often, it may be worthwhile to make mention of it in here. Milgram's research found that nearly 65% of participants obeyed an authority figure and inflicted a 450-volt electric shock because they were ordered to do so. But the results failed to provide any explanation or why each of these individuals obeyed the given order. There may have been very different conditions or circumstances which led to the obedience found in each participating person. Therefore, nomothetic researchers would argue that Milgram's research only allows us to make predictions on groups and not on individuals. While Milgram's project, which is about 65% of the population, would be just ordered, would be unable to accurately predict what an individual would do. Let's consider. Alpert, on the other hand, who first used the term ideographic, argued that it is only by understanding individuals that we can make accurate predictions on their behavior. And of course, this brings us to the end of this episode for today. We will meet you again here by the next episode. Until then, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.